Scream 7 is almost out, and it's 2026. 30 years ago, Scream wasn't even out. And I want to take you back to that time to talk about Scream and what horror was going through in the mid-90s. I'm Alex from Sandro Says. Please leave a like on the video. Let's get into it. Alright, in the mid-90s, horror was in a bit of an odd spot. The 80s was the rise of the slashers. You had Michael Myers in Halloween, 1978. He set the stage for everything. Following up was the Friday the 13th series, and then Nightmare on Elm Street. Those were the three kings of horror. It was Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees. They were all mythical killers almost. Michael Myers started out as a regular crazed person, but a silent killer, almost supernatural strength. Jason Voorhees was a reanimated corpse, reanimated kid who survived drowning or something like that. Superpowers. Freddy Krueger came into your nightmares. Crazy idea. Attacked you when you were least, or most vulnerable, excuse me. So that was what happened in the 80s, and all those movies and all their imitators and the lessers had tons of sequels. And by the time the 90s rolled around, Michael Myers, 3 of his last 4 movies weren't well received. Jason Voorhees, we hadn't really seen him in a movie since, I think, 89. Friday the 13th, even though I love it, Friday the 13th, The Final Friday, or whatever, not The Final Friday, whatever the one is called, Jason Goes to Hell. I like it, but Jason's not really in the movie, so it's kind of a cop-out. And even A Nightmare on Elm Street in the 90s was going the route of almost self-referential satire. Wes Craven, the original director of Nightmare on Elm Street, had basically left the series after the first movie, came back for a new Nightmare, which I think came out in 93 or 94, and it was a kind of interesting take. It was a breaking the fourth wall movie where they were aware of themselves. So that was something new, but it didn't really sell. It didn't make any big waves. Horror in the 90s, it seemed, was more about thrillers and things like that in the early 90s. So that was the landscape that Scream, at the time being written, is known as Scary Movie. But that's the landscape that Scream came into. So people were kind of bored by horror. It was corny to them at this point. It was a slasher. He was lurking somewhere in the shadows. Maybe he'd have a quip or something before he stabbed you. It wasn't going to be super gory. If anything, it was going to be comical, the gore and the kills. So that's why when Scream came out, it was such a shocker to people. It was a realistically believable movie. The killers in it, I'm not going to get too much into spoiler talk until later on, but the killers in it are regular people. They're not supernatural. They don't haunt you in your dreams. They don't use zombies or anything to attack you. It's a real situation with real people. It put it in your homes. People didn't even have caller ID yet, for the most part. I know we didn't at my house. So the idea of someone calling and you have no idea who's on the other line, that happened in your house all the time. That was scary. That's what makes movies scary. That's what made the original Halloween scary, because it could have happened to you. It could have happened to anyone. So right off the bat, Scream, first scene, Drew Barrymore getting the phone call. That scene sets the stage for the whole movie and tells you that you're in for a completely different ride. It's a gory scene. It's tragic because she sees her parents get home as she's being killed, and she can't yell for them because of the injuries she sustained. It's just a gruesome start to a movie. Now, let me tell you about my history with Scream specifically. Scream came out in late 96. I was 10 years old at the time. I wasn't going to horror movies in the theater. But when it was on VHS that summer, I believe I was homesick for some reason, or I was doing something at home. Me and my brother were able to go to Blockbuster and rent a movie each. He rented Scream. And then he had to go do something. He worked or something that day. So I was going to watch Scream while he was at work. And I think I watched the first scene and said, nope, I'm waiting until he's home and I'll watch the rest with him. Because that first scene, it grabs you by the balls and it doesn't let go. It's terrifying. It's scary. And, and it lets you know that we're in for a different ride here. So, the reason we're in for a different ride, like I mentioned, Wes Craven earlier, he's a horror legend. And not only is he known for the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but he also has done other horror, like The Last House on the Left, which is a terrifying movie from the 70s about a home invasion and a kidnapping, and it's a horrible, horrible, horrible movie. and I don't mean in a bad way. I don't mean like it's a something that Wes Craven did a bad job. It's just one of those dark subject matter movies. So anyway, he has a great history with horror, and then they paired him with Kevin Williamson. Kevin Williamson, famously the writer of Dawson's Creek and other shows of that ilk. So he was very much a 90s teen guru of how to write and represent kids on screen. Even if it wasn't the most realistic at all times, it was something that spoke to audiences. It was, quippy, like again, self-referential, talking about movies, talking about situations they were in as if they were smart enough to know what was going on. So you paired these two people up together. Now, this had a ripple effect on horror, the way that Scream was done. Scream, as a self-referential, almost not parody of horror, but it knew what it was doing. It was, the killers were realistic. It had a ripple effect on horror. A lot of horror after this. I Know What You Did Last Summer, the Valentine movie. I actually liked that as a kid. That was really scary. Just Scary Movie itself and the Scary Movie series. They, were born out of this. So Scream is just like it's a monumental moment in horror. So, all right, now let's get into spoiler talk. I gave you enough time of the preamble. If you haven't seen the movie yet, it's been 30 years, so please watch it. It's phenomenal. I love Scream because not only is it a good horror movie, it's a good whodunit. It's not the killer's just Michael Myers that's out of a jail and you know who it is. There's a lot of red herrings in this movie. They spend a lot of time almost painting it like it might be Randy because he's the movie nerd and he's the only one isolated without a relationship in the group. They make it seem like it might be Dewey for similar reasons, but Dewey, a lot of times Ghostface is on the phone, and as soon as he hangs up, Dewey comes running out with his pistol out as if he's going to shoot someone in the house. And then, of course, once they have the scene where Stu and Billy terrorize poor Randy in the Blockbuster that he works at, that's when you kind of know, okay, well, one of these guys seems like he might be the killer because they're acting a little weird. But they do some great red herrings because they have Billy get arrested earlier and then they kind of exonerate him. They say, oh, it couldn't have been his cell phone. It was this other thing going on. So throughout the whole movie, the first watch through, you don't know what's going on. And that's always the great part of a horror movie, or, some movies to me. I love just the mystery of it. I have to call out certain characters here. I mean, Dewey, like I said, David Arquette, great job. He played this. He was a nerdy nobody at the time. Part of the Arquette family. Fine, I don't know who the hell they are. I just know they're actors. But he was goofy, and it's almost funny because he's more like Officer Doofy from the Scary Movie movies than he is in. I think in like Scary Movie 3, he's more doofy-ish than he is here. Along with him, you have Sheriff Burke, who just seems like, people are getting killed. This sucks. What are we gonna do? But he's kind of a funny character. You have Billy and Stu. They're a great, tandem, even though they're not necessarily a pair. They are a pair. They're clearly best friends. You can see why they get into this together. At the time, having two killers was not something that was really done in the mainstream, I would say. It was like, again, for a movie like this, it's usually one killer. So that's where, when Billy was, shown to be exonerated, it was like, so he's clearly not going to be the one later that's revealed to be the killer, right? And then when he is, it's like, oh, well, Stu's. So the whole thing is, it's done really well. Matthew Lillard is Stu. It's a manic performance. It's comedic while being scary. I hope they bring him back in Scream 7. I've been waiting for that since Scream 3. Jamie Kennedy is Randy. Also really iconic character. The way that he talks about the movie, he does it in a natural way, even though he's screaming. It almost seems like a person if you are a movie nerd or whatever. If you have a friend that's a nerd about something, Randy, it's like it's bringing this movie home to you. I think Tatum was a lot of fun. Rose McGowan. She doesn't have a lot of time on screen, but she's like one of those horror characters that people love, and people like still love to this day 30 years later. And it's like, man, she got killed so early, but she had an impact clearly with her quips and her attitude and stuff. And she was a great looking woman. I mean, let's be honest here. It's Hollywood. Every woman in this movie is like a 10. So that'll bring me to Neve Campbell. Neve Campbell, oh man, such a crush of mine as a kid. And Sidney Prescott, one of the best final girls, especially the way she fights in all the movies. She knows something is going on right from the get-go. She's in fact been on alert for a year now because her mother was killed the year before. So Sidney Prescott, badass final girl, badass horror character, top notch. Can't say anything bad about her. Courtney Cox, on the other hand, she plays the semi-evil Gale Weathers really well, where you can tell she's out for herself, but she does have some, maybe, heroism shining through by the end. So the first movie is the best representation of Gale that they have, in my opinion, because after this it just becomes rehashes and confusing character choices. So let me see. I think that's just about everybody from the main cast. I also want to shout out Kenny, the cameraman. That's just hilarious, the way that Courtney Cox pushes him around. The way that he gets a glimpse of hope in her when she says, I could make a free man, a guy on death row go free. And he's like, oh man, look at that. That's honest. And she's like, can you imagine how many books that would sell? And he's like, he's brought back to reality that she's a horrible person. And then the principal, of course, Principal Hembry. It's the Fonz. It's Henry Winkler. That's cool because I think people hadn't seen Henry Winkler since Happy Days had gone off the air about in 84. He'd been in some small parts here and there, but I think that was the reintroduction of Henry Winkler as now an adult in Hollywood. Whereas even though he was an older kid as the Fonz, he was always like the young, hip guy. Now he was like the older, like, uncle type character, which was cool. I think that was a great, casting for a cameo there. I also have to shout out the opening in this movie. Right off the bat, this opening is unlike any movie in history. It says Scream, there's a phone ringing, and there's screaming, and that's it. Boom. It's like a 5-second crazy opening. I'll show it to you.
Hello?
Like, what is that? I don't even... It doesn't... From what I can tell, she hasn't started the movie yet, so the screams are not ambient sounds from Drew Barrymore's house. So that's piped in, but the phone call's not? I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think about that particular scene, because that always kind of baffled me. And I also like how it's a classic movie. It's not sequel baited up. The two killers, as far as we know, are dead at the end. There's no question. Or at least there's no nod to they might survive. Even Randy acknowledges this is when the killer comes back to life for one final scare, and Sidney puts him down. Like, she put a bullet through that guy's head. He's not coming back. And they didn't nod to Matthew Lillard being alive. Now, they can easily retcon that because he just had the TV knocked over his head. They could say he was knocked out. Whatever they say. Doesn't matter. I don't care. But the movie itself did not say, hey, be sure to tune in for Scream 2. And I liked that about this. This is just a one and done. It ends on a morning, kind of like the original Friday the 13th. And just a nice sunrise rather, and it's like, things are going to be okay amidst all this crazy blood and carnage. So, and then within a year we have Scream 2. So, we'll talk about that next week. So, let me know in the comments what you thought about Scream. I personally have to put it up as one of my favorite horror movies of all time because of it being self-referential, because of it being different, because of the realism aspect, because of the gore, because of the soundtrack and stuff like that. It hits you at the right points. So and it has just an ominous feeling to it as the sun is setting in the town and things go dark. And then as soon as those kids leave the party to go celebrate the principal's being killed, I guess, it's like, now it's getting a little eerie. Now there's not that many people in the house. When it's a big party going on, it's not that scary, even though Tatum gets killed. But something about this movie, man, just it gets you. So, and I love the sequels too. We're going to talk about each one of them leading up to the release of Scream 7 at the end of February. So, tune into the channel. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please like and subscribe. And I will see you next time. Take care.